Hi everybody and welcome back to the Wolf Den Library. My name is Miss Evelyn and today we are going to finish reading Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is the great illustrated classics version that was adapted by Jack Kelly, illustrated by Pablo Marcos, and published by Baronet Books. I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 19, The Final Battle. For 3 days they all moved up into the wild and mysterious mountains of Transylvania. Jonathan, on the puffing steamboat, worried about Mina. Quincy and Dr. Seward rode along the bank. They led extra horses so that the others might join them if they needed to. Van Helsing and Mina drove along in a carriage, moving as fast as they could toward the Borgo Pass and the castle of Count Dracula. Once they stopped at an inn, and a peasant woman saw the scar on Mina's forehead. She shrank back in terror. After that, Mina kept her hat on to hide the evil mark. Arthur and Jonathan were almost at a point of catching the gypsies when their steamboat crashed in the rapids of the river. The gypsies were able to continue in their lighter craft. Arthur had to make some repairs quickly. To make better time, Mina and Professor Van Helsing took turns driving. The country got wilder and wilder as they moved farther into the mountains. There were no more houses along the road. Everything was desolate. Now Mina began to sleep so soundly all day that the professor could not waken her. He became very worried. The power of the vampire seemed to grow on her as they approached his castle, but they could not turn back. When they reached the Borgo Pass, Mina pointed to a track leading to one side. "This is the way," she said. "How do you know?" Van Helsing asked. "Jonathan came this way when he first approached Castle Dracula," she said. Was that it? Or was the castle drawing Mina on now? The professor became even more worried. When they stopped and fixed dinner, Mina would not eat. She had no appetite. Another bad sign. Finally, they came in sight of Castle Dracula. It was very cold. Van Helsing decided to camp for the night. He made Mina a bed of the furs they had brought. Around it, he made a circle of garlic flowers. "Come closer to the fire, Miss Mina," he said. She rose, but she did not come closer. I can't," she said. "Good. The circle will protect us. If you cannot move outside, they cannot move inside." The horses screeched and tore at their ropes all night. Van Helsing had to go and calm them. When it was almost dawn and the fire started to die down, the snow came. It swirled all around them. Through the flakes, Van Helsing saw 3 figures in white. At first he wasn't sure, but yes, they were 3 women. The same that Jonathan had seen at Castle Dracula. They came closer, closer, but could not come inside the ring of garlic. They called out in sweet voices to Mina. "Come, sister, come to us, come." Van Helsing was glad to see that Mina looked on them with terror. She was not yet one of them. As the sun began to rise, the figures disappeared. The gypsies had now transferred the box from their boat to a wagon. They were beginning to climb the long road toward Castle Dracula. Jonathan and Arthur left their steamboat behind and chased along on horses. Dr. Seward and Quincy Morris, riding by a different road, were also hurrying on. Van Helsing left Mina asleep and made his way to the fearful castle. The doors were open, but he broke off the hinges with a hammer to make sure he would not be trapped inside. Then he began his search. As he found the first grave, he heard, far off, the howl of a wolf. Should he return to Mina? No, he thought. Better that she should be eaten by wolves. He could not leave this work undone. Inside the grave, looking very, very beautiful, was the first of the 3 women. As he gazed on her lovely face, Van Helsing wondered if he would have the nerve to do what he knew had to be done. He found the second tomb. The woman who lay inside that one was even more beautiful than the first, and the third tomb held the most radiant woman of all of them. Van Helsing's head began to spin as he thought of what he had to do. Then he saw a 4th tomb, larger than all the others. On it was carved one word: Dracula. This was the home of the king of the vampires, and it was, for now, empty. He put garlic on it so that the count could not use it again. Now he began the awful work of driving stakes through the bodies of the 3 women. With every blow of the hammer, he trembled. The women screeched and plunged and twisted under the stakes. But when the work was done, a look of peace came over each face. Van Helsing finished the job by cutting off the heads of the corpses. Instantly, each body turned to dust. The professor hurried back to where Mina was waiting. She was awake now, unharmed. "Hurry," she said. "They are getting close. I know it. We must go and meet them." They walked down the steep hill. The snowstorm grew worse. It was terribly cold and gray. Behind them, they could see the outline of Castle Dracula, which stood menacingly against the sky. Mina grew weary with walking through the snow. Van Helsing found a little cave near the side of the road. From it, they could look all the way down the side of the mountain. At the bottom, they saw the black ribbon of the river. Farther up, they were able to make out a wagon struggling up the mountainside. Behind it, 2 pairs of men on horseback were pursuing the wagon. "Look through the binoculars and tell me what you see," the professor said. Mina looked at the distant figures. "On the wagon is a box," she said. "The men around it look like gypsies. They are hurrying. I don't think the men on horseback will catch them." "The gypsies want to reach the castle before dark," Van Helsing said. "I don't blame them, but they will have to pass here, and we will stop them if we can." The snow fell more heavily and blotted out the whole scene. When it cleared again, the wagon and those pursuing it were closer. "It's Jonathan," Mina said. "I can see him clearly now, and Arthur with him. Coming the other way are Dr. Seward and Quincy." "We will have the gypsies surrounded," Van Helsing said. "Get your pistol ready. I hear the wolves closing in, too." They waited. The gypsies struggled up the hill. As the snow cleared, the sun came out. It was hanging just above the tops of the mountains. In another few minutes, it would set. Then Count Dracula would be free to take on any form he wanted. Their chance to destroy him would be lost, maybe forever. Just as the gypsies were reaching the spot where Van Helsing and Mina waited, Jonathan, galloping on his horse, caught up with them. "Halt!" he called. They did not speak English, but they knew from his tone what he was saying. At the same time, Quincy Morris and Dr. Seward appeared on the other side. The leader of the gypsies gave a command. His men, who surrounded the wagon, urged it on even faster. The pursuers pointed rifles at the fleeing gypsies. At the same time, Van Helsing and Mina, with their guns in hand, stepped out from inside the cave. The gypsies prepared for a fight. Their leader pointed first at the box on the wagon, then at the setting sun. The battle began. Jonathan from one side and Quincy from the other began to fight their way toward the wagon. There seemed no way they could reach it before the sun went down, but they continued to struggle. They paid no attention to the flashing knives of the gypsies, nor the howling of the wolves. Finally, Jonathan reached the wagon. He leaped up onto it. He lifted the heavy box and flung it over the side. Quincy and the others continued to fight with the gypsies. One of their knives stabbed toward Quincy, striking him. He grabbed his side. Blood splurted through his fingers. Still he fought on. He made it to one end of the big box and began to pry it open with his Bowie knife. Jonathan used his own knife to force off the other end. Arthur and Dr. Seward stood guard, forcing the gypsies back. The cover of the big box fell off. Inside lay Dracula. He was deathly pale. His eyes burned with hatred and evil, but as he saw the sun finally dipping below the mountains, his look turned to one of triumph. He would escape now for sure, he thought. At that moment, Jonathan's razor-sharp knife cut through the Count's throat. Quincy Morris instantly plunged his big Bowie knife into Dracula's chest. For an instant, a look of deep peace passed over the Count's features. Then his body turned completely to dust. Seeing this, the gypsies ran for their lives. Quincy Morris sank to the ground. Blood was still flowing from his wound. Mina ran to him. All the men gathered round. "Don't grieve, little lady," Quincy said to Mina. "I have my reward. For this it was worth dying. Look, the curse has passed away." With his last strength, he pointed to where the scar had been on Mina's forehead. The last gleam of the setting sun showed that it was now as pure and white as the snow. Silently, and with a smile, Quincy died. And that is the end of Dracula by Bram Stoker, adapted by Jack Kelly, illustrated by Pablo Marcos, and published by Baronet Books. I hope you all enjoyed it. Next week we will have another Beatrice Potter story, and the week after that we are going to start on an adaptation of The Secret Garden. I hope you all tune in next week, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.